wonderful to be here this morning. I know it's a little hot outside still, but you know, we've got, it's pleasant enough to bear it, and we know we've got, you know, the cold coming. So we're enjoying this time in between. And felt really good to get out this morning and get over here to the church. I have a message that's, it comes from that saying, in the eye of the beholder. Have y'all heard that before? I think most of us have been around long enough to hear that one. Actually, I had to look it up. Where did this come from? I had a big picture come across my screen of an eye.
Twilight Zone episode.
Well, yeah, that too. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I read that too. Did y'all hear what he said? Twilight Zone had an episode many years ago with that title.
It was in 62 with Donna Douglas.
Okay, there you have it. 1962 with Donna Douglas. And so I started doing some reading. I had got this big eye come across my screen, and the iris had the colors red, blue, yellow, and it just struck me about how we see things, how we view things in our world, the multicultural dynamic of today. And I started thinking about perception and that type of thing. So what does this mean? What is the message here? What's coming through? And one of the things I saw was that there had been that's an interesting story. I'll try to recap it, although you can correct me.
It's just one of my favorites, and I knew Donna Douglas when I was a kid, because she grew up in South
Who
Michigan.
knew?
And so I got to kind of hang out with her for about 3 years when she would come to town. And it was really kind of cool to be a kid and watch Beverly Hillbillies. And then get to meet.
Absolutely. That's one of those stories you carry for a
She's
lifetime.
exactly the same person. And they actually had chosen her because she grew up with animals. So for that role.
Okay, I'm going to have to watch it now, okay? I am going to have to watch it. As I understand it, I'm sure I won't say it just right, because I may have seen it many years ago, but at any rate, the woman had to have a surgery, and they were going to take the bandages off, and she wanted to go. Some people said yes, and some doctors said no, it's not time yet. At some point, she had, you know, apparently you got the impression from what I read, she had been disfigured or had something hideous that had happened to her face. And when the bandages came off, I believe she was a really, what we would consider beautiful woman. And then when you see the other characters in the background, they all have the distorted or the hideous type appearance. And so it sounds like a wonderful metaphor to watch this. I'm going to go and check it out. But it's definitely a lead-in to beauty is in the eye of the beholder, because the assumptions that we carry, we form our ideas of what looks good and what doesn't. And sometimes it might be different than what the next person sees or thinks or feels. And in fact, it is, isn't it? In many cases. We run into this all the time. And we tend to sometimes join and, you know, birds of a feather flock together with those folks that we have the same views and attitudes and opinions about things. So that's just all to say that that's kind of what we see happening in the world. And what's great about that is that we can always adjust it. We can, you know, we can take off these glasses and put on these, and we can sometimes open our minds and hearts to listening and evaluating different things and kind of judging for ourselves how we view things and what our perspective is. So that's the wonderful part of being alive. You know, that's what gives the meaning, like Pat was reading in the Daily Word. The meaning to our lives is that we're alive, we're dynamic, we have the power. We can choose for ourselves. You know, and each of us have that innate power. You know, the Word tells us that we create with God. We're co-creators. Wow. Power. Sometimes we might not feel that powerful. And sometimes it might be seen in small ways. Sometimes we might not even recognize that that's what we're doing because it's just become a part of our life. But when we make choices that's using the power that we have to choose. So it's there in all of us. The other thing that I looked up was, where did the quote come from, or the phrase, in the eye of the beholder? And that comes from Margaret Wolfe Hungerford. And she was an 1800s author from Ireland and had several well-known works. And one of the ones that she was most known for was Molly Bawn, who was a young Irish girl. And it kind of tells a flirtatious love story and about the life of this young girl. And in the story, she first uses this phrase, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So they attribute it to her from the 1800s. So I thought that was an interesting fact. Now, the other thing that came up pretty quickly for me was I started thinking about our stuffed animals here and the drive. And then I remembered, y'all may have read this or heard of it. I know some of you have, the Velveteen Rabbit. Okay, so this is for the child in us today. If you haven't heard of it, you want to get it, you want to read it. It's, see if I can get this right, by Marjorie Williams and illustrated by William Nicholson. And the artwork in it is fantastic. Who's heard the story of the Velveteen Rabbit or the Velveteen Bunny? A few of us have. So it's about a stuffed animal that was given to a little boy. And he had a lot of toys, just about everything you could think of. But this was just a little plain bunny. But this rabbit wanted to be loved. He wanted to be real. He wanted to be a real rabbit. He had heard that if someone gave him love, he would be real. This is what develops and comes out in the story. The little boy at one time began to pay attention to him when he hadn't in the beginning. And that made him feel very good. He started to feel special. Then when the little boy became very ill, he wouldn't part with his bunny. He held on to him, he held him, and the little bunny was becoming kind of worn and ragged. You know how the little nose falls off and they're not so shiny anymore. But he felt very good about being a part of that child's life. He was on the way. He was on his path. And so when the little boy became so sick, he had scarlet fever. I think they came in and they disinfected, and the clinical people, they all said, get rid of everything that's here now because we're moving this out. We're cleaning everything out. They took everything out. The little bunny's out, now to be burned in the trash or something, right? And he's so sad. And the story says that the little tear, a real tear, falls from his eye. And from that tear, a little fairy comes up, a little magic. That was the energy of love that appeared before him. And the fairy granted him his wish to be real, made him a real bunny. In the fairy tale, he goes into the woods with the other bunnies. And then he comes back later, maybe a year or two later. The little boy kind of sees him out there in the field. He looks at him and thinks, kind of looks like that little bunny rabbit I used to have. But the Velveteen Rabbit is a beautiful story of unconditional love. It's a story that we never outgrow. Just think of this Velveteen bear also, and the love that we put into being connected with it, what it means. And that's our word for today, is meaning. And that's, even though we have differences in how we look at things and how we believe, how we think, how we express ourselves. And let me just say, in this community, we have a lot of varying opinions and feelings that come up from time to time in our conversations, and I've made note of those. Don't we all? We listen to what it is, the opinions, the thoughts, the likes, the dislikes. Well, I'm kind more like this. And yeah, I know, but I'm kind of more like this. And so we have these conversations as we shape ourselves and our beliefs and our feelings. And I believe that this is our intent, to bring forward into the light what we hold in common, but also what we hold differently. The different ways we look, the different ways we express ourselves. And this is a safe place to do that without judgment, without fear. And so I feel really good about that. It made me think a lot about how happy I am to be a part of this community, to be connected with people, to be in a place where we can each have our own perspectives and decide for ourselves what we believe, with support, with love, with great faith. And we're allowed to change. I certainly do. For many times I've changed certain positions or my understanding on different things. It's all about growth. It's all about choice. So, when we look in the mirror, how do we judge ourselves? Are we accepting and loving of ourselves? I think for the most part. And sometimes we see something, golly, I got to wear that. What is that going to do? How's that going to make my hair look? Is that going to fit on here? Blah, 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 There's this awareness of how we appear in the world that seems to tie right in with this message of beauty being in the eye of the beholder. Ultimately, I can look, and if I see something that's kind of beyond the face I'm wearing, okay? And we have this ability, don't we? We see what's underneath. And other people see in us what we don't always see in ourselves. Isn't that right? I mean, sometimes we can. And we can kind of laugh right along with it and recognize parts of ourselves that we don't really want to show to the world sometimes leak out to our best friends and acquaintances or people that just observe us. And we have these tendencies, to look at ourselves in a certain way that, I like this or I like that, or I'm trying to accept this, or this is what I'm trying to change, and that's okay. We're human beings. But to really project, hopefully, what has meaning for our lives into the world, we try to focus on those things that we accept and love and that are beautiful and good. The scripture says, think on the good things, the things that are pure, the things that are holy. So when we come in to a place of affirming for ourselves how we want to be, that's generally where we look. What is it that we believe in? What values do we line up with? That's a good question. We can go in and take inventory. We can look in the mirror. And when we're there, we're going to see all the other stuff too. And that's okay. And that's something like a TED Talk that I just recently watched. I'm not sure when this came out, but it just came across my screen also, and it seemed to fit right in. It's a lady named Linda Lundstrom. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of her, but she's a well-known Canadian fashion designer coming out of the fashion industry, been connected with that for many years, designs her own works, and was giving this talk about her experience with that industry. And of course it showed a lot of magazine pictures, and she kind of pointed out how that's all directed to, the public to look a certain way or buy a certain thing. And she made a point of this. She said that model's legs couldn't be that long if she was 6 foot tall. But that's what, or, you see these picture perfect type of images. And we're affected at some level, sure, because we see it. We're impacted. We have to filter that. And this can influence us in different ways about what is acceptable, what is beautiful. So it's not to say that all of those things are wrong. Of course not. You want to have a healthy appearance. You want to be able to live your life at some sort of a level where you're happy and comfortable and aspiring to be your best self. It's okay to have goals, of course. And when you line up like that with certain things, sure, let it motivate you. But she was simply pointing out that there are other distortions to what's real that can affect people in different ways. So what she did was, after she kind of pointed out the unreal aspect, she showed a campaign that she did compared to nature. And she had these beautiful pictures that she took of the forest. And within the forest, as you went through, you saw some dead trees where you were walking, and some diseased or some twisted trees. See? You remember when Jesus healed the man and touched his eyes, and he said, what is it? He said, well, it kind of looks like trees walking. So there are perceptions involved with how we see things as to whether they're perfect or right or beautiful. But the story from nature and from her pictures was that that's all beautiful. We don't judge that, do we? We don't say, look at that old ugly tree, or look at that mashed up flower. No. There's something about nature and the life in it. And what I'm really bringing to you today is that we are a part of nature. We're alive. We have being in the world with all of our perceived flaws, with the ways we look, with all of the labels that we place or that others place. We're still here, vibrant and alive and bringing meaning into the world. We still have the power to project ourselves, our true selves. Nature is unconditional. And I believe that that's why that brings me to the heart of the message, which is the scriptural text, Matthew 6, 28 and 29. In the book of Matthew, Jesus is speaking. Jesus says, "And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these." Now, was he really talking about clothes? Could have been. But if we go a little deeper, if we look up inside and get into it, into the consciousness of what he's saying, and really tune in on that, I believe he's speaking to that ability of nature, and to that nature within us, to be completely open and trusting, to have that ability to know that we don't have to be a certain way, to be loved, to be accepted. All we have to be is ourselves. And I realize that life's experiences have sometimes been cruel. But that doesn't mean that we can't drop those things from our consciousness and have a new experience. And I believe that's what we're called to. A challenge to love ourselves in that way first and then bring it forward. So, I have to drop all the labels. I'm this, I'm that, I believe this way, and really kind of get into the heart of, I'm me. Some people might not like me. Some people might look and say this or that. Some people may say, yeah, high five. But regardless, if I can see myself as being a part of that creation, I don't have to worry. I don't have to fear. I believe that's what Jesus was saying to all of us. And any of those that bring a message of all of the ascended masters, all of the many gurus of the world, of the different world religions, share an understanding that love is not based on anything that we do. We might choose a life of service, but we can be loved simply for who we are. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I'm the beholder, you're the beholder, God's the beholder. So we have all these different ways of interpreting that. But what is beauty? It's not perfection. You know? You know what it is. You know what's beauty. It's being alive. It's being able to be yourself. It's being able to experience life with meaning. And we each do have things that we bring to the table, gifts, and yeah, some of us we may say, wow, they're beautiful. And that's true. But there's an underlying beauty that comes through everything. Just a couple of verses here. When in the Old Testament, when see if I get this right, 1 Samuel chapter 16. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And that's what we're doing when we're connecting with nature and being completely rejuvenated. We're sitting in the energy of that unconditional love and acceptance. We're able to see at that same level as our Creator. We're not looking on the outer appearance. We're not seeing that rumpled leaf. No. We're seeing the beauty. We're seeing the acceptance. We're seeing just the pure spirit of love. God is in it, and God is in us. And I believe that we can make a difference where we are and see beauty in all things. One of the things that I have to do is drop the labels as much as possible. I may identify in certain ways, but I don't want it to let me be apart from everyone to any significant degree. So one of the things we celebrate here is that we have things in common, but we accept our differences. And I think that's in line with that. I do. Those different ways we look, those different ways we talk, those different ways we study, those different groups and ideas that we connect with, they're all a part of that forest. That picture, the big picture. And so, in the Song of Songs, beautiful, beautiful love book, like a poem, very poetic. Chapter 4, verse 7, it says, "You are altogether beautiful, my darling. There is no flaw in you." Take it in. Take it in. It's yours. I'm going to close with my mother's favorite Proverbs. The virtuous woman. She is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand, in her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are pleasant ways, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who take hold of her. Those who hold her fast will be blessed. I pray God continues to move this message through your mind and hearts in whatever ways it fits for you. Thank you.